So good morning again, everyone. I think we had a very, very enlightening kickoff to this event today, thinking globally, acting locally. So for today's session, the second session, we're going to talk about building sustainable communities. And I think it's really important to highlight these organizations that we're going to talk to today. They are about sustaining livelihoods while still sustaining the ecosystem and adding values for all stakeholders, humans and non-human stakeholders. So first up in today's panel, we have Aljosha Wothke. I hope I pronounced that correctly. He is the founding director and CEO of the Environmental Research Institute of Charlotteville. Many of us would know it fondly as ERIC. And they work with the sustainable management of the northeastern coast of Tobago to ensure environmental sustainability. He has won awards with project leads in areas of conservation, climate change, adaptation, and CSO governance. In the last 2 years, he was the leader for the draft of technical documents for the Northeast Tobago successful nomination as a UNESCO Man and the Biosphere Reserve. Right? Joining us as well is from the Brasso Seco Morne Farmers Association, Javed Omardeen and Lawrence James. Mr. Omardeen works as an organic farmer, beekeeper, and agro-processor. And though he lived in the city for much of his life, he was drawn to the pristine surroundings of the wildlife environment. So his life has had vast economic inequalities, and realizing that the extraction of occupations contributed significantly to environmental destruction, he sees the need for more sustainable income opportunities, especially for persons in rural communities. He sees this capitalization and competition outlooks have justified people's acceptance of environmental and social injustice. So one of his main things in working in the organization that he works in right now is to look at sustainability and equality. Mr. Lawrence James is also a farmer from Brasso, Seco, and he cultivates a mix of traditional crops like banana, provisions, ruku, citrus, shatta, and breadfruit. So you name it, and he has it. His varieties also include many more exotic fruit trees. He has especially gotten involved in beekeeping and has also made the decision to follow organic practices for the health of the bees and the environment. He loves working in Brasso, Seco and being in harmony with his environment. So, good morning, gentlemen. How are you today?
Good morning, Melissa. Thank you for the welcome. We're fine.
I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
That's okay.
Oh dear. All right. So, as a means of, we're going to start with Mr. Wothke first, and we have a few questions here. So what is the general focus area of your organization? What does your work entail on a day-to-day basis?
Well, Eric's mandate is really Northeast Tobago. We implement projects and programs all geared towards linking communities with community livelihoods with conservation. So our day-to-day life is really work life is from baseline monitoring of environmental health, whether it's reef or forest health, to capacity building in the communities. That is capacity building from on a personal level, like things like with SGP, with the things like conflict resolution and leadership and oratory, for example, to working with other community groups regarding climate change. At the same time, we are trying to work on a policy level, which means we're trying to assist government and local stakeholders from the private sector and from the NGO sector to create the framework, policies, governance structures, strategies, management plans for Northeast Tobago or for aspects of Northeast Tobago. So it's very broad. I'm not hearing you, Melissa.
So why did you decide to embark on a Small Grants project? What problem area were you trying to tackle within the northeastern part of Tobago?
Well, we had over the last 7 years, we had 2 small grants, and they were all targeted towards one ecosystem health monitoring. So we developed and implemented the International Reef Check program, which is a reef health monitoring program, and we developed new sister project to it, or program to it, which is called Forest Check, which is a citizen science-based health monitoring for our forest ecosystems in Tobago. And it included as well capacity building. It included create the training of what we call community-based field technicians, which are people from within the community that are now trained to do ecosystem health assessment and communicate about it, whether to schools or to peers or just through a normal conversation in the community. And why we went for those aspects is because any intervention that that is meaningful in Northeast Tobago regarding conservation needs, on one hand, the baselines, the scientific baseline. So we need to know what is the status of our ecosystems, and it needs, on the second level, or on a partnering level, it needs the communication with the stakeholders. So how can we share the information that we create and we gather? How can we share this with everybody? And that means from the normal community-based stakeholder, whether it's a fisherman or somebody working in a supermarket, anybody, as well as to decision makers, influencers, multipliers, and politicians. And each of those groups requires a different communication strategy. So those programs were both addressed in gathering data and disseminating the data in a meaningful way to various stakeholders groups.
So a lot of your work takes place in the rural landscape. How has the community characteristic impacted your work, positively or negatively?
What to say? It's working within Northeast Tobago with various communities. There are aspects that assist us, and there are aspects that are some that impede what we want to do. But so the positive things are really that there's a high interest in Northeast Tobago of people being involved in conservation activities. They want to learn more about their ecosystems and the importance of it. So we sometimes really run into open doors. On the other hand, what is clear is that while Northeast Tobago is a very relatively pristine area and healthy area, there are definitely certain aspects that need to change, how natural resources are managed and how our natural heritage is preserved. And that means changing some of the habits, the nasty ones, and sometimes people don't want to change. And change is something always something to overcome. So obviously, if any group, whether it's a community-based group or an expert-based group like us, works in a community and they want to change something, some people will welcome it and others will not welcome it. And we have to just work with both and find out how can we communicate the necessity to change certain things in a way that everybody understands it, or provide or assist in providing alternatives to destructive activities, whether it's using a different form of packaging material or whether it's changing from unsustainable fishing methods to more sustainable ones, or from using pesticides to more sustainable agriculture.
I see that a lot of your work entailed a lot of baseline data being collected and public education. Has there been any real changes that you think should be celebrated within the communities that you've been working in over the last few years?
I think, well, this is on different levels. The first obvious aspect to celebrate that the conservation status and the attention to the ecological importance and the natural heritage and the opportunities that the communities in Northeast Tobago have in sustainably managing their resources has significantly increased. Northeast Tobago is now, as you said before, a UNESCO Man in the Biosphere Reserve. We got the first national heritage site in Tobago in the form of the Main Ridge. We will get more. The conservation status has changed. It has become harder to commit environmental crimes, atrocities, or something like that. So there's more an eye on people. But that is on one level. The other level is really how would have people changed, and I think what we can observe is that more and more people start to see that there are ways in which they directly can benefit from those designations, how they can manage their natural resources more sustainable. And I think one important part is people see changes in the environment, for example, to climate change or change of fish stock, but most of them do not know why this is happening and what they can do against it. And I think we have reached many people that are now aware there are solutions and where they can find them. And over the years, on a personal level or organizational level, we realize that more people come to us and ask us for assistance. And I think that is a very important aspect, because it's not that we are pushing out a communication, it's a pull communication. So people are coming and asking. And in the moment people asking for assistance, that changes the ball game.
That's a lot of interesting work that you all are doing there, and I love the focus on connectiveness, connecting what's happening on a global scale with what we are doing and what they can continue to do. While you've been working on these projects, has there been anything that you learned from any community that you didn't know before that will help you going forward and doing other projects?
Oh, well, I'm learning from the community. Our organization, our staff, first of all, includes community people, but personally, and the organization is learning every day from the community. We see everybody in the community that has a talent to observe as a kind of a scientist. We get very valuable information on how the natural resources react to change. Actually, our best observers are based on the ocean, in the forest, and what we hear from them is very important. Obviously, sometimes we have to translate this into scientific realities and start to collect testable evidence. But we are getting, on a consistent basis, we are learning how we can, what they observe and how we can address it, and how we can improve our messaging. I really would like to have known what I know now, if I would have known that 7 years ago, it would have would have helped with certain aspects.
What do you find most interesting about working in these communities? Because I know each of them will have their own identity.
I find most interesting the enormous potential that that these communities have. I find the interesting part is how can we help them to unlock the potential? How can we help them to understand their importance and the importance of natural resources? Yeah, that is for me the major challenge, but an interesting challenge. Because rural communities are mainly, again, conservative and not necessarily very open to change. But and for hundreds of years, well, not for hundreds, but the change has happened slowly in the rural communities. But in recent times, change is coming faster, and they are more resilient against fast terror-changing environment.
Mm-hmm. So thank you so very much. I just want us to start talking to our other guests for this morning's panel. That is Javed and Lawrence, and they are from a rural community as well in Trinidad, Brasso, Seco, and Morne Farmers Association. Good morning again, guys. Still there? Good morning again, Javed. Are you hearing me? All right. All right. So while we get Javed and Lawrence back, I just want to ask, what has been one of the things that you found useful that may have been overlooked by persons when they are new to working in communities?
Well, I think over the years, one of the major lessons learned was that conservation is not by no means an isolated activity. It includes social aspects, it includes cultural aspects, it includes educational aspects. In case like our organization, which is not a community, where we work in a community, we live in a community, we participate in the community, but we are not a membership community-based organization. It's very important to think about the social license to operate, and especially the working on the UNESCO Man and the Biosphere program made it even more clear and brought it into context that the sustainable development is really all-encompassing activity, and the level or the work that our organization is involved in requires us to think about cultural aspects and social aspects. It's not just, we just cannot go out and collect data or write scientific articles or do academic work. That is important. It is the foundation for our work, but there are many layers on top that are very important. I have learned so much about communication in the last 7 years. I thought I know something, but it's always good to know that you don't know anything. So I'm just in the process to understand, to consistently improve our communication work and how we reach out to community members or other stakeholders.
So we would like to bring Javed and Lawrence back in the conversation. Good morning again, guys. Are you hearing us? I think your mic is muted. Just put back the volume on so you can tell us a little bit about the organization. Hi guys, I'm not sure if you realize this, but I think you're on silent. So can you just press that little microphone button again and let us know that you're hearing us?
Well, so we have to sing a song.
Oh gosh. So thus far, we've learned a lot about Eric and your monitoring programs. We've been able to talk about connectedness. I've seen that word came up before in the previous session when Elise and they spoke a lot about collaboration, and that is between people. And now we're looking at the connectedness between us and our rural landscape. So guys, are you hearing us now? Totally lost. All right. Right. We spoke a lot about collaboration, and that is between people. And now we're looking at the connectiveness between us and our rural landscape. So, guys, are you hearing us now?
Yes. Are you hearing us?
Yes, I'm hearing you. So I know we can't see you because one of the major things about working in rural communities, you have to be ready with with your internet connection. So I would like you guys to just yourselves to your
Are you hearing us?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good. Well, y'all could go ahead and yeah, let's start.
So would you like to tell us just a little bit more about your organization and the work that you all do? Yes.
Okay. So yeah, as an introduction, I'm really sorry for the delaying. So we are, I'm really grateful to be present here today. Our organization is a farming organization. It's based around the communities of Brasso, Seco, and Morne, so it's in the northeast part of Trinidad. It's around for some years now. It's basically an organization of farmers who have come together to work together and to do different. One of the main projects of our organization these past few years has been the bee projects, the beekeeping projects.
So just speak up a little bit again because we're kind of losing your connection right now. Guys, we apologize so much for the inconvenience. However, this bit of technical difficulty is beyond our control. So Javed, when you hear me, just continue. So over the last few years, even though I'm from a rural community, I've been doing a lot of learning. I did not realize how close Brasso Seco was to the northeastern coast, and also that they were such a vibrant farming community. So these guys have been doing a lot of work up there. I don't know if any of you all have ever made it past Blanchisseries and keep going. It's a very long drive, and you may have experienced a lot of issues with your technology. The data doesn't work so well, so we just bearing with the guys as they go through this. And what we are getting right now is a true sample of some of the issues that they have to deal with when they are working on projects, because we know when we are working on projects, connectivity is one of the things that we always have to try and maintain to get our work done on a timely manner. So Javed, are you guys hearing me? Right. All right, so we just got you guys back. And you were talking about your beekeeping work. I know we're all excited to hear about how the honey is produced in your clean environment of Trinidad. So could you go ahead and tell us about your work again?
Yes. So our work entails encouraging members of the community to become beekeepers, as well as encouraging other members who are not interested in beekeeping necessarily to work with us on a project in which we are trying to build sustainable livelihoods around this whole beekeeping. So how it works is that we have a lot of farmers in the community. A lot of them practice unsustainable farming practices. They like to spray, cut down all the trees, and use heavy pesticides and mostly plant short crops. And what in them is an alternative by giving them training, by help.
I think we've lost them again, but we would like to welcome Ms. Charlotteville to the panel right now. I think she has she wants to ask a few questions of Javed and they. However, we seem to have lost them again.
So actually, no, Melissa, I've actually opted to assist Javed in the answering because I understand internet connectivity issues. So if it is that there are any questions that need to be responded to, that I could facilitate, seeing that Javed and Lawrence, unfortunately, due to connectivity, can't be able to answer them properly. Right, but I will leave it to Javed is back, so let Javed respond. But in the meantime, if you require any assistance, I'm only here to support.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So as we were saying, talking about our project, basically we're encouraging others into beekeeping. Farmers, as I had mentioned, that a lot of them are practicing unsustainable farming practices. They use a lot of pesticides. They cut down all the trees, and we providing them an alternative. Not only giving them training, providing helping them get bees themselves, actually giving them bees as well too. But we constantly there's a unit of support.
Sharda.
Yeah, so let me try to continue for Javed's benefit. So
yes,
we're providing capacity development to the beekeepers to improve their beekeeping practices and hive management. But we're also facilitating capacity development in the community for the development of value-added products from hives. So we're using all of the other products from hives that are not usually utilized, things like the beeswax, etc., to develop our value-added products in an entire different industry. So Brasso Seco is now, what we're trying to develop is a Brasso Seco to be its own holistic community that deals with everything beekeeping. So there's a place that we want Brasso Seco to become the beekeeping community, where you would go to learn about beekeeping, learn about value-added products, learn how to make those value-added products, but also purchase those value-added products, right? So and some of the value-added products that they're looking into are things like candies, lip balms, creams, and other beauty products, and that sort of thing. So it's not going to just be a focus on the honey production, but also on empowering other members of the community to develop other products from beekeeping, right? So what Javed and them did last year is that they actually did a survey of their community, and they were able to identify that through the beekeeping practices and tradition that is within their space, they've been able to actually increase the opportunities for employment, which is very important. For the ACBO Congress last year, Javed and a lovely young lady from Brasso Seco, Janessa, presented on how beekeeping has been able to support that sustainability within the community. And it spoke about the fact that it supported beekeeping supports not just production of honey as a product, but also supports the short-term crops as well as the agroforestry in the area. So, for example, the production of fruits, as well as the production of small crops like the tomatoes and the cucumbers and stuff like that. So the initiative really is rather holistic in supporting them. One of the deliverables will also be from their grant will be the establishment of the country's first community-owned and run honey processing facility and value-added products space, and that will, God willing, that will be done this year. And they are in the process of working the details out as we speak. But it really becomes a community enterprise. That's basically what we're looking at developing. So, Javed, is there anything that you'd like to add? If you can add, that is. Oh, I believe we may have lost them.
Okay, so yes, I think we I think we promised that it allow the audio every couple of minutes. So yes, well, I think that's more or less the gist of the project. Well, also the development, the inclusion of the non-beekeepers in the value-added product, the creation of value-added products, and yeah, I think it's extremely important, to reach out to everyone in the community as wide a reach as can possibly be accomplished in one project. Yeah.
All right, so Javed, while we still have you, what community characteristics elements and that would have impacted the project itself, positively or negatively?
Okay. Well, on the negative side, there are issues and difficulties with individuals and personalities that I guess you.
Okay, so we've lost Javed. Let me continue his train of thought. Javed, okay, he's there. So Javed, to continue. Okay, so he's locked off. So there've been issues in personalities and communication within the community space itself, and so it speaks to the need for development of within organizations the ability to appreciate each other's points of views, etc. So we're talking about teaching members of the community as well as the organization leadership skills. Leadership as well as organizational structure and proper organizational communication. That has been one of the major issues in terms of development of the project. But overall, despite the personality issues, despite there's always that conflict between persons. How should I put it? Older generation, so traditional ways of doing things and new ways of doing things. That always has been a conflict. Every generation goes through it. So it's about bridging that gap. It's about bridging that gap and being able to try to help the NGO build the capacity within themselves to be able to sift through the feedback that they get from their stakeholders, whether it be older stakeholders or younger stakeholders, to come up with a strategy or resolution that is as all-encompassing as possible.
I think that is a trend that can be echoed in many rural communities, especially when there's a great dependence on more traditional life forms. So we want to apologize again. You know that though Brasso Seco is a very pristine environment, the internet connection is not always there. So it seems as though we've lost Javed and Lawrence just for a few moments. So I'm just going to continue to ask Sharda, what is the challenges? What has the changes within the community look like in terms of the practices on a day-to-day basis? I know he mentioned agricultural use of chemicals, but
right. So aside from the changes in terms of the agricultural use of agriculture, let me step back and say what I have observed as some of the changes in terms of the community and the development of this project. First of all, the first change that I want to recognize is the introduction of a new team and the empowerment of new members within the community with respect to the management of the projects, as well as the work of the projects, etc. And I would like to acknowledge Javed and Lawrence, and I am extremely apologetic, but also extremely saddened that the internet could not have connected them this morning, because I think they're two powerful persons from Brasso Seco. They're part of a team of at least 10 persons in Brasso Seco that are passionate and driven towards achieving the goals of this project. And it's sad that something as like internet would keep them from being able to exchange the way that we need them to. We need their voices. We have to hear that commitment. It's sad, right? So that's the first thing. So that's the first change that I've noticed, that there's a shift in allowing some of the younger generation now to take management and control of some of the activities and sort of the direction and the realization of the strategic goal towards, of the organization, be it in the beekeeping or whatnot. But it's not just the beekeeping, it's also the chocolate factory. I'm seeing that sort of change. I'm also seeing a change in terms of a lot more empowerment of women. So the president of the Farmers Association is now Janessa De Ramos, a woman. And that's a very important thing, because in rural communities, it's always a patriarchal system. So to have more and more women in leadership positions, in business development positions, is always an important change that we want to see, and definitely that Jeff SGP supports. So those are some of the changes that I have. I can't speak to the individual day-to-day changes like Javed and Lawrence would be able to. And I really hope that they're able to come back on in order to be able to provide that kind of feedback, because I think it's so important to hear from them. They have so much to share.
So they are from within the community, and you would have started off as a visitor. What was one thing that you learned about the community that you didn't know before, or you didn't even realize you didn't know before starting with this project?
I think definitely that this community is so progressive. Nobody would ever think that a rural community could be progressive, to be very honest. But this community is definitely one of the most progressive that I have seen. And I was impressed by the progressiveness of the organization. Well, no, not the organization alone, the community members. Now, many a times as qualified persons, all of us with degrees or whatever, we walking around and we throwing around big words like eutrophication and deforestation and whatever, and we throw these words around because we think that we've learned it in our textbook setting or whatever. What I've noticed a lot is that they have the basic understanding of many of these principles, many of these impacts. And you know what? They also have an understanding of how to solve these problems. And that is something that really impressed me with many of these community groups. The direction and the solution and the way in which the Brasso or the honey Seco brand is developing is a direct result of the requirements and the needs and the vision of the people who are there. This is not Jeff SGP telling the community where to go and how to get there. No, this is the community saying we want to get there, but we lack this little bit of capacity here and there. Help us to achieve it. And this is something that I think was also impressive. They asked for help. They were open to help. They were open to, let's try something new in order to be able to move forward, in order to be able. So they are flexible, they were adaptable, they're moving with the times, that sort of thing. So that is another way I think that the community has definitely that has definitely impressed me going into the actual space itself.
I find it very enriching and refreshing to hear you talk about the fact that there is so much knowledge, even though these people don't know the terminology for certain things, they are well aware of what is happening around them. This is a question for both of you all. What kind of indigenous knowledge have you been able to gather from this project while being in these communities, and how has it been useful as you go forward in these projects?
All right. Aljosha, you want to start? You're muted.
Just unmute your mic, please, Mr. Watt.
Oh, Aljosha, you're muted. All right, so let me answer. Okay, go ahead, Aljosha.
Go ahead. Ladies
okay,
first.
so thank you. In terms of indigenous knowledge, I think the whole concept of living in tandem with your environment. So Brasso Seco is we call it a rural community because there are persons who live in the forested areas of the Northern Range, right? They live very close to very pristine rivers. They have a lot of biodiversity around them. And many a times when humans or the rest of us may move into a space like that, we don't understand how to live in tandem with our environment, how to keep that environment in situ and conserved, and still be able to live with all the bugs. You know, if we had to move up there, plenty of people would move up with a big on and the fly swat and the electric zappers, etc., etc. This is different. This is a community of people that live in tandem with the environment, and they want to keep it that way. So you have a situation where they are open to Zoom meetings and hop-in meetings and doing eco-symposiums and all of these things. And so they have a technologically advanced, or they're thinking modernly, but they still live in a rural space and want to develop a lot of their projects in more modern ways as well. So it's the marriage of, or it's the attempt at marrying both that rural existence with environmental conservation, while still trying to include or incorporate elements of modernization or digitization into the operation itself. I think that for me would be something that has been impressive, but it's the indigenous knowledge of being able to live in tandem with the environment that they have sustained. Right? So they don't pollute. So their gray water goes into the environment in such a way and is treated in the environment in such a way that it does not have that level of impact as compared to us who live in concrete jungles and are not really dealing with our spaces in the most appropriate way for dealing with our own personal pollution. They do it a lot better than we do. Aljosha?
Well, I'm a bit torn apart with that question. Because on one hand, I agree with Shada, and I see some people really living in harmony. Other people, and I think it's the majority, are not actively thinking about living in harmony, but they also don't harm. And then there are some that are causing a lot of harm, and some of those are members of rural communities. That is without question. I think what we need to think about is when we use the word of indigenous people, knowledge. If you look at this a bit more regionally or even globally, then that indigenous knowledge and that living in harmony with nature and seasons are things that often developed over thousands of years. However, for us in Tobago specifically, and most areas in Trinidad, the linkage between the culture of people and this type of environment is maybe 300 years or 200 years old or less. So I am not 100% convinced that you can compare the indigenous knowledge and living in harmony and aligning of human and natural rhythms that you might see in remote Amazon or Pacific Islands or wherever. I don't think you can compare this to what we did. Except some of the Amerindians that are still living amongst us, we are all immigrants, and just for 2 or 3 generations. And immigrants, the reason why they immigrated was to exploit natural resources as fast and as destructive as possible. That becomes sometimes clear when you think about history, for example, in Tobago, where you have this main rich forest reserve, but in principle it's all secondary forest. All this was cut down before. So I think there's a difference. But what gives me a lot of hope is that I think that environmental education that has been done by many organizations, as well as through schools, through and in schools, etc., over the last 20 years or longer, has made a very significant impact. And we have now a generation of decision makers, 35 to 40 years old, or 43, 45, that go into politics, that have come into position of power, that go up in rural communities, and at the same time are aware on how delicate the relationship between people and environment is. And I think we get more and more open ears with people that are from community councils to farmers to politicians to administrative and technical people. So I think we're going in a good direction. At least for Northeast Tobago, I can say that in the last 5 years we have, but Northeast Tobago has done more strides towards sustainable development and community inclusion, linking communities to the environment than we have done in the last 40 years.
So welcome back, Javed and Lawrence. Lawrence, I know you had the opportunity to grow up in Brasso, Seco, but Javed expressed that he left the urban area and then he entered the rural landscape. Was there any bit of indigenous knowledge that really and truly has assisted you in embarking on the types of organic projects that you are now engaged in that would be considered indigenous knowledge?
Yeah, one of the things in the indigenous knowledge is I learned from my father, my grandfather, where he was a bush doctor, and what happened is that he used to plant a lot of medicinal plants, right? And where he will have to make medicine for people in the country area, right? And he also was a guy that rub people like when they get pain or whatever, right? And also they had something where you
I think we've lost them again.
yeah.
We can hear you, Lawrence.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So so in a way that they will work together on more production with bananas and medicinal plants and things like, getting back to, well, in a way that they will sustain themselves to live in their time. Now that this time now where we're trying to push that method back now because of the COVID, right? So we're trying to get everyone in the community to go that way again.
So while we have you guys here, I want to find out from you, what do you think is very useful that others may overlook when supporting communities?
So what might be very useful, being able to really make use of all the different talents of all the different individual people who make up the communities, and there's a lot of discovering that needs to be done in order to figure out what they are, but they're really important and they lie hidden in everyone. And it's through working together with others, I think you get to learn what is everybody's skill and putting persons in the place where they could most benefit one another, benefiting based on their natural talents.
I love that. I love the answer. Just one more question for you guys, and then how you all are engaging with people every day. What was the biggest hindrance that you found becoming more self-sustainable in your particular communities?
Could you just say that over, please? Quickly.
Right. So the question basically is, what is the biggest hindrance to becoming more sustainable in your community? Okay, so
I think it comes back to the working with different people's personalities, but not only the differences, but there are some things that I don't think everybody on the outside or somebody looking on into the community from a different perspective would know, is that people within rural communities tend to have lots of long-standing grudges towards one another. So these things need to be they need to be dealt with individually, but they definitely need to be worked upon. And I think that's one of the challenges that is very often overlooked.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Charlotte spoke about you having additional products out of the beekeeping other than just honey. And I would really I'm sure there are people that want to know, how are we getting access to these products? How can we make contact with you all? I know there are many people that buy beauty products every day, and it would be lovely to buy from a sustainable community.
So well, right now we're still in the stages of fine-tuning these products, getting them very, very getting everything perfect and correct, and testing them out and everything. But we will be, in the future, we will be marketing them and selling them on the market. Maybe we might start at some of the Namdevco farmers markets, because some of the farmers who are in part of this project, a lot of them actually sell at these markets. So in the one in Arima and the one at Croix, they sell at. So actually the farmers group has a stall at the Arima and Namdevco market. So I would think that might be one of the first places that you all might start to see our products. But for right now, it's just honey that is being sold there. But the other products, like the meat and the candles and the other value-added products that we will be bringing out in the future, we will start at there and we will expand from there going further.
So thank you guys so very much. I don't know if you all were able to hear them, but right now they are members of the community that have all at the Arima Farmers Market. I believe it's on a Saturday morning. I don't remember where it is, but on the Sunday morning there's the McCoy's Farmers Market at the wholesale market across on the highway. So that's where we can find them for now, and we continue to look for them in the future.
Melissa, you muted yourself.
Thank you. Just as we look to wrap up, a lot of people want to know how can we connect with these people. So I just added both of their Facebook pages as a start. So I don't know if Mr. Walt could tell us, how do we connect with Eric? If it is we want to get involved in the work, if it is we can just support by just being cheerleaders and just sharing your work, how do we get involved?
Well, that's pretty simple. You just call 788-3550. No, you will find us. You will find us on Facebook. You find all the contact information on the website, and you will find the office number, and you will also find my personal number. I still happy to have the liberty to be accessible. So yes. Yeah. Any comments by email, Facebook, normal social media?
So, Melissa, one last thing. Most of our Jeff SGP projects are actually available off the Jeff SGP Trinidad and Tobago website. So when you go, you can search for different organizations, you can search for projects, you can search beekeeping, you can search biodiversity, and all the projects in the different areas across the country will come up. The ones that are ongoing, as well as the ones that are completed, all the contact information for the relevant persons are available from their individual pages. So Jeff SGP has a page that's dedicated to, like, for example, Eric's project. Now that it's completed, there's still a website that will be forever ad infinitum available. And the thing is, as long as I update and put some of the deliverables and some of the outputs of the Eric page, that page becomes more and more rich with information in terms of the organization. But all to say that from the Jeff SGP website, you can get contact information for all of our NGOs, all 92 that have done projects. They are supposed to be, contact information is supposed to be available off of that website, right?
So Javed, I don't know if you guys want to add anything, if you all are still there with us. How do we interact with your community? Do we sneak a drive up there? Right, so I don't think that they're there. I am from a rural community, so I have a lot of biases towards rural communities, and it's a joy to be able to talk to organizations in rural communities. What is your biggest joy, your biggest pleasure out of the work that you're doing in this room? We could start with you, Mr. Walk. I'm pronouncing it wrong.
I honestly did not hear your answer. I'm hearing a lot of motion. There's a crab in the line. Can you ask?
Try now.
Again, please.
I asked what brings you joy about being able to work in the rural landscape?
Oh, that's pretty simple. I grew up in a very rural community. I was grew up in a 500 people small village in Germany, and with 4 or 5 years, I could take out a big dog and walk for hours by myself in the forest. Something hardly imaginable nowadays. But I really enjoy nature. But what brings me personal joy is that I think I can see progress, and I can see change in a direction that I think is going in a good way. Sometimes working in the environmental field or in this kind of field, this can be very frustrating. But I think we are able to reach people, and we can make a positive impact on people's lives as well as on the life of the non-human stakeholders, which I think that gives me the drive to continue. You muted yourself, Melissa, again.
So Javed, are you guys there? So I would like to invite Sharda to talk about one of your experiences with working in the rural community of Brasso Seco that you think brings you a certain amount of joy.
Okay. So I've worked with multiple rural communities, not just Brasso Seco, but I especially like Brasso Seco because of what I mentioned before. The persons that we work with in the community, the persons that I've met in the community are really trying very hard to live in tandem with the environment. And it's in other words, so their concepts and their methods, etc., align well with my belief system as well. So I grew up in Laventille. I don't know if you call that rural, but my grandmother was from Granville, Cedros. So there was always this interaction in terms of rural and vulnerable spaces, and I've always wanted to bring benefit to those all of my life. And working with Brasso Seco has been very, very extremely pleasurable because of the persons who are there, as well as because of the space that it is. Brasso Seco is a beautiful location. I always enjoy my drives up there when we have meetings, etc. And you know, I'm a little frustrated with COVID because I don't get to go as often as I would like. So for me, my joy is actually being able to interact, to do the, I haven't done a tree sampling with them, but we used to do like visits to the river for testing, etc., etc. And all of those interactions have always been very positive. I've done forest walks in Brasso Seco, etc., and that sort of thing. So it's always been positive that way. Javed?
Javed, you guys there? No, we still don't have them. Sharda, I know COVID has made everybody envious of those who are able to still go into these beautiful spaces. Javed, can you tell us something that has brought you joy about working in the rural community? Javed or Lawrence? What about the work that you are doing right now with in sustainable communities brings you joy about the rural spaces that you're allowed to work in?
Sorry. Maybe I better ask Charlotte to answer the question because the quality I'm not hearing.
All right, Sharda answered her part of the question. So we've been having a very meaningful discussion this morning about building sustainable communities. And it has been really lovely to have the opportunity to speak to two different organizations that work in the rural space. I know a lot of times when we talk about sustainability, we think about it as a classroom word, but rural spaces really give us the opportunity to see these things in action. There was a lot of mention of, you know, coming into the communities and ensuring that we have social license to operate. And I would always remember that when we're dealing with communities, we are dealing with not just a person that's concerned about environmental development, but about taking a holistic approach to these people. And especially in rural communities where everybody knows everybody and everybody has had a long history of working with one another, it's really, really important that we understand how those relationships work and we give a certain amount of respect to this. I would really like to thank Mr. Walk for talking about that connectiveness that they bring when they do environmental education, connecting the research that we may think goes into a box somewhere and is for people in university with the day-to-day life of persons trying to make a living. So we look forward to continuing to hear about these organizations, to connect with them, to probably volunteer. I don't know if COVID is going to allow us to visit. However, in the meantime, we would encourage you all to break out into our networking sessions. There's also, remember, there's an open space where we have the art, the film, and the IDB offerings available for you to check out in our networking space and the expo as well. So feel free to check those things and have a wonderful afternoon and continue to enjoy the program. All right, guys, thank you so very much for talking to us. Javed and Lawrence, I hope you all continue to do your work, as well as Mr. Walk at Eric and Tobago. continue to do the wonderful work that you all are doing with these communities. And thank you, Sharda, so much for being able to facilitate a lot of the work that happens within these communities and your interest and dedication to these projects, and for stepping in even today when I was beyond your call. Thank you so much, guys.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye, guys. Have a good one.